Okay, welcome back everyone to the deep dive. This is where we take, these really complex topics, try to pull out the essential bits, and give you something useful, something you can walk away with right now. It's all about that extraction. So today, we're digging into something truly foundational for safe medication use. We're talking about the nursing process, drawing from uh, one of the core pharmacology texts by Lilly, Collins, and Snyder. It's that organizational structure.
It really is. And understanding this, it's not just like for passing an exam. This is the absolute bedrock for safe professional nursing practice. It's how we think, how we organize care. It's the art and science bit, really.
Absolutely. So we're going to unpack this five-step framework. It's flexible, adaptable. It guides all those key decisions around giving medications. Okay, so let's get into it. The nursing process. The text calls it well-established, research-supported, and, crucially, flexible. Adaptable. It's not just a rigid checklist, is it? What are these 5 core steps?
Right. Not rigid at all. The 5 steps are assessment first, then identification of human need statements. After that comes planning, and that includes identifying outcomes, which is super important. Then implementation, that's the doing part, including teaching the patient. And finally, evaluation. Did it work? And actually, before we dive into assessment, there's a key language point the text makes. A real shift. We need to be using the term human need statements. That's the specific wording now. It's replaced nursing diagnoses from, older ways of thinking. It's more patient-centered.
That's a really important distinction. Human needs statements. Got it. It shifts the focus, doesn't it, towards the patient's experience. Okay, so the nurse uses this process, but who actually starts the ball rolling with the medication order itself?
Ah, right. That's the prescriber. And the text defines that pretty broadly. It's any health professional who's licensed to prescribe meds. So doctors, advanced practice nurses, physician assistants, dentists, depends on the regulations, obviously. They write the order.
But the nurse manages the safe administration using this process.
Exactly. The nurse owns that part.
Okay, so phase 1, assessment. You said that's first. If this whole process is about safety, assessment sounds like, well, the foundation. What does it really involve when we're talking about medications? It's more than just a quick check, I assume.
Oh, way more. It's absolutely the bedrock. You're collecting and critically analyzing data. 2 types. You've got subjective data, that's what the patient tells you. Their history, symptoms, allergies they know about, what meds they already take at home, including herbs or supplements, and, really important, their understanding or even cultural beliefs about medicines. That affects everything.
Okay, so their story. What's the other type?
Objective data. This is the measurable stuff. Vital signs, lab results, what you find in a physical exam, imaging reports. Like if you're giving a new blood pressure med, you need recent BP readings, maybe kidney function tests, electrolytes. You need the hard data. And getting this assessment right, it's everything. If the assessment is weak, the whole plan built on it is flawed. Simple as that.
Makes sense. So you gather all the story, the numbers, then you move to phase 2, formulating these human needs statements. This is where you figure out, based on that data, what the patient actually needs related to their medications, right? What problems or risks are we addressing?
Spot on. You synthesize the assessment data to pinpoint those specific needs. What's the patient experiencing or at risk for that nursing can address through the medication process?
And that flows right into phase 3. Planning. You mentioned outcome identification is key here. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, this is crucial. The planning isn't just vague goals like patient will improve. No way. The text is really clear. Outcomes have to be specific descriptions of patient behaviors or responses, things you can actually see or measure. They show that the need you identified is being met, and they have to be framed in behavioral terms.
Okay, so give me an example. Make it practical.
Sure. Instead of patient will understand their new inhaler, it has to be something like patient will demonstrate correct use of the metered dose inhaler, including spacer technique, by discharge tomorrow. Ah, I see. Specific, measurable.
Exactly. Measurable is non-negotiable. You need SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. That's how you'll know later in evaluation if the plan actually worked.
Right, that measurability connects directly to the end. Okay, but before evaluation, we hit phase 4. Implementation. This sounds like the action phase, where the rubber meets the road.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. Implementation is carrying out the plan. It's giving the medication correctly, following the 9 rights we'll talk about. But it's also ongoing monitoring and critically patient education.
Okay, patient education. And this phase, implementation, brings up 2 really interesting terms from the text: compliance and non-compliance.
Yes, and the definitions are quite specific, carrying some ethical weight. Compliance is defined as basically the patient fulfilling the prescriber's or nurse's plan. But the text points out that using this term, rather than just adherence, acknowledges that we've considered an ideally accepted input from the patient, their family, their caregiver. It suggests collaboration, okay, a collaborative feel. But then there's noncompliance. And the definition here is striking. The text calls it an informed decision by the patient, not to follow the plan. An informed decision. That sounds powerful.
It is. It really frames patient autonomy. It's not just forgetting or being difficult. It's presented as a conscious choice made after, presumably, receiving information.
So if noncompliance is an informed decision, how does that change our role in implementation, especially around patient education, if they have the right to say no?
That's a fantastic question. It shifts our role significantly. If noncompliance is potentially an informed choice, then our primary job isn't coercion. It's ensuring the choice is genuinely informed. Our implementation focus, particularly education, becomes about providing clear, unbiased, comprehensive information about the risks, benefits, alternatives, everything. We need to explore why they might be hesitant, address concerns, but ultimately, if they make an informed refusal, we document that we provided the education, we assess their understanding, and we respect their decision. That's respecting autonomy.
Wow, okay. That puts a lot of responsibility on the quality of our education and communication during implementation.
Absolutely. It's central.
So after implementation, giving the med, educating, monitoring, we finally get to phase 5. Evaluation. Closing the loop.
Exactly. Evaluation ties directly back to those specific, measurable outcomes you set during the planning phase. Did the patient achieve what we planned? If the outcome was BP below 440/90, did we measure it, and is it there? If it was demonstrates correct insulin injection technique, did we observe them do it correctly? Evaluation tells us if the plan worked. If yes, great. If no, or only partially, then it triggers a reassessment. You cycle back through the process. Maybe you need more data, a different human needs statement, a revised plan. It's dynamic.
Really is a continuous cycle, not just linear steps. Okay, so that's the 5-step process. But the source also stresses some overarching responsibilities, right? Let's talk safety, foundational rules.
Definitely. When it comes to actually giving that medication during implementation, safety is paramount. And it hinges on the 9 rights.
The 9 rights, let's list them. They're crucial.
Okay. Right patient, right drug, right dose, right time, right route. That's the classic 5. But critically, also, right documentation, right reason, right response, and the right to refuse. That last one connects right back to our talk about autonomy.
9 rights. That's the minimum standard for every single administration.
Every single time. And sometimes you hear about other rights too, like the right education, right assessment. It all fits together.
And adhering to these rights is how we prevent. What's the formal term for when things go wrong?
A medication error. The definition is important. It's any preventable adverse drug event involving inappropriate medication use. And the text makes a key point. The error might or might not actually cause harm to the patient. Even if the patient is okay, if a mistake was made, if one of the 9 rights was violated and it was preventable, it's still an error. Needs reporting, analysis, system improvement.
Preventable is the key word there. Okay, we've got the process, the safety rules. How does this connect to, like, the bigger professional picture today? What trends support this?
Great question. 2 big initiatives really underpin this in practice: QSEN and IPE.
Quality and safety education for nurses.
Exactly. QSEN focuses on the core competencies nurses need to improve quality and safety. Things like patient-centered care, teamwork, evidence-based practice, informatics. For meds, this means using technology smartly, like barcode scanning, communicating clearly using standardized tools like SBAR, double-checking high-alert meds. It's about building safe systems.
And IPE, interprofessional education.
Right. This is about different healthcare pros, nurses, doctors, pharmacists learning with, from, and about each other to improve collaboration. Think about medication reconciliation across care transitions. That needs teamwork. Pharmacists catching interactions, nurses clarifying orders with prescribers. IPE fosters that collaborative culture essential for medication safety.
So QSEN is about nurse competency, IPE is about teamwork. Both drive safety.
Precisely. And you also mentioned the Next Generation NCLEX, NGN.
Yeah, that's changing how nursing students are tested, isn't it?
It is. It's moving towards assessing clinical judgment more directly, using complex case studies, which requires nurses to use the nursing process to assess complex data, identify needs, plan, act, evaluate, just like we've been discussing. It validates this whole framework.
So tying it all together then, the nursing process isn't just like 5 steps to memorize.
Not at all. It's the embodiment of professional nursing judgment applied to medication management. It's the standard. It ensures care is thorough, it's safe, it's centered on the patient's actual needs. From that very first assessment all the way to checking if those specific measurable outcomes were met, your entire practice quality rests on applying it rigorously.
So for you listening, the real takeaway here isn't just the names of the 5 steps. It's recognizing the whole system, the thinking, the ethics, the professional standards that goes into giving even one dose of medication safely. It's far more than just a task, it's a process. And that leads to our final thought for you to consider. We talked about QSEN and IPE aiming for system-level safety improvements. We talked about the 9 rights for individual practice. So when a medication error still happens, despite these systems and rules, where does the nurse's individual accountability end and the system's accountability begin? How do we navigate that complex responsibility? Something to think about. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive, and a warm thank you, as always, from the Last Minute Lecture team. We'll catch you on the next one.